So I went a couple years down there. Oh, and that first year I also learned about short sheeting beds and all the tricks that go into the military. And and there was during that time there's a couple of days they take you out bivouac. So we went out to a place, and the regular army people come around and try to harass you as if they were enemies, and they lined us up for our secured the place. And my sergeant was even though he was reservist, he was a real gung-ho, as they call it, type of guy. And so he was lining them up, and he took me out to be kind of a outpost out there, and he lost me. And he lost a couple other guys in the process, but I was in a position I could watch him wandering around looking for us. And I was over close enough that I got to see this one field, and the regular army during these maneuvers, they bring out like the 4th of July type of explosions and that, and plant them in the field far enough away from people. Well, I'm not so sure I was far enough away. I had to cover my ears. But since I was lost, they didn't know I was there. And they planted all these explosives out there, and they put on quite a show. And the commander of the base, he comes out in a truck that had a speaker on it, and likes to drive around and harass the troops. But he drove, from where I was at, I could see the whole thing. He drove right into a place that our company had set up a blockade and everything. And they stopped him, and they got in the truck, and the driver took off the truck, and they were in there, and so they were announcing over the speaker coming up. They'd been announcing that we were under attack and you should give up, and like the propaganda things that you see with the wars and that. And our people were in there then, and they were zipping around the place, and they were hollering, "We have them! We've captured them! We've got their truck!" Except the driver wasn't ours.
I see.
So we get a little chuckle out of stuff like that while we're in the military. Anne kind of laughs when I've given her my history, and she's written down for me, and she says, "Is that all you do? Is just play play around?" And I say, "That's why they call it war games."
Yeah.
So then, after a couple of years there at that, they up and changed our company. We were working as a cook in a mess hall, so we cooked everything. We did breakfast with eggs and bacon, the toast, and then for lunch we would cook up potatoes and some meat, and have fruit, fix up fruit dishes. Of course, most all of that came out of a can, and the eggs even came out of powdered eggs. We'd have to mix it up with water, and sort of like what you see on MASH. And then we'd have something a little nicer for dinner. And one time we had some guests come from Salt Lake, and they were going to eat, and they talked to the troops and was going to eat in our mess hall. So I spent all night making cinnamon rolls. that was an interesting time. I did a lot of the baking because back in our home reserve, they had some training one time, and there was only a couple of us volunteered to do it, where we went down to a bakery, Eddie's Bakery, and worked for them. They got us free labor, as free labor, but we got the training, and so I knew quite a bit about baking, and so when it came to baking stuff like the rolls, the cinnamon rolls, that's why I was selected to do it. And we would cook in coal stoves, where the old cast iron cooking stoves, and you'd build a fire over in the firebox, and it was made so then the heat would take the smoke up and then go across the top, and that's where you would fry stuff on. And then it, as it cooled along there, it would go down the side, and that would heat the other side, come along the bottom, and then up the back and out the exhaust, out the stovepipe.
I see.
So always the side by the firebox was the hottest. So when we would cook cakes, we'd have the mix in the cake, big cake sheets. So we'd make a cake that was like 2 feet by 3 feet in a tin, and we'd put it in, so you'd look through the window, and the side by the firebox would start raising, and the other side wouldn't. We'd have to carefully keep it from going flat, open the oven door, bring the tray out, but don't get it too far away from the stove, because if you don't want it to get cold, that'd cause it to flat. Turn it around and put it back in so the other side would get cooked. And so it was quite an art to cook in the old coal stoves.
How many would you cook for?
Oh, let's see, I think we fed in ours about 500 people. Problem in Laos. That was a prelude to Vietnam, but it was like about 10 years before Vietnam. But Laos, I think you remember when the Po Pen or whatever his name was went through and just slaughtered the Laotians and made them all slaves. And he didn't kill, he made slaves. So at that time, we were out to load in the trucks, and they took us by trucks, convoy, to this Yakima range. Buses, actually. Trucks and buses. They took our trucks and buses out there. And as we were ready to load, they stopped us, and this RA sergeant that was pretty much in charge, of our place there at Pocatello, he came out and read a directive. Before that, that stirred up, and they said they announced to us that we were frozen. So anybody that was eligible to go to inactive duty, so me and all the friends in that would have ranged in that area. Inactive reserves were frozen in the regular reserve. Well, there we got out, ready to load and go, and I could have left. He came out and read this proclamation that it had settled down and we were no longer frozen. And so anybody that didn't want to go to summer camp could leave.